Come read with me. This is Violet Culkins, and we're reading from Six of One, Half a Dozen of the Other. This is my autobiography, and you can find my books on Amazon. If you like, there's this one and 3 others. So let's get to it. The catch. As all young ladies do, I use the resources available to me to make a good impression on my new suitor. Since my household duties included a large share of the cooking for the family, and I had been cooking for the family, and I had been cooking since I was 10, I had a fairly well-developed culinary skills by the time Dell and I met. I set out to use those skills to my advantage. As the saying goes, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Although it is impossible to be alone in such a busy household, I decided to do the next best thing. I invited Dell to have dinner with me and cooked a dinner for just the 2 of us. We had a small table about the size of a card table in the corner of the kitchen, and I used this for our, quote, romantic dinner for 2. I cooked an extra special meal that I knew he would appreciate. I prepared pork chops, mashed potatoes and gravy, green beans, and homemade biscuits. The cooking went pretty well, and Dell was duly impressed by the attractiveness and aroma of the food set before him. All 6 of the younger children had been warned that this was our special meal and not to disturb us. For the most part, the family was pretty cooperative, except for Eileen. That is, Eileen, as I said, was a typical 6-year-old. And I told you before, she loved attention. She loved to run around the house and play. She was learning to read, and she loved to play with her dolls and toys. She had curly blonde shoulder-length hair, she was energetic and giggly, and she had 2 front teeth missing. The main difficulty with Eileen was that, as the baby of the family, she couldn't tolerate competition. Since I had been the one to pay her most attention, she did not take kindly to the stranger who had stolen her big sister's heart. The admonition to stay away and allow Dell and me to enjoy a private dinner was only served as a challenge to her. She waited until we were well into our meal before she finally decided to make her entrance, disrupt our meal, and shatter our serenity. Dell had just taken a bite of his pork chop and had commented that it was very good. Eileen chose this moment to show that she could be very bad. She scampered up to the table, and before I could stop her, thrust her hand into the bowl of mashed potatoes, pulled out a fistful, and stuffed them into her mouth. Then, as if this were not embarrassing enough for me, she looked right at Dell, opened her mouth wide, and stuck out her tongue, full of mashed potatoes. If there were any point in our dating relationship that I could have wished to hide, this was it. I felt like crawling under the table. It was the last time I tried to cook for him alone while we were dating, quote, dating. I imagine that having so many children to keep track of could be a harrowing job. The way Mama dealt with it was to give us children as little freedom as possible. Just as a mother hen and her brood of chicks, Mama kept us within sight of her most of the time. This was still true as we reached the dating age. We were closely monitored for time and almost always were required to have a chaperone. We were not allowed to stop or park on the way home from our outings. Mama would invariably ask, "Did you park on the way home?" I always answered truthfully and somewhat resentfully, "No." I did not like her interference or her inference that I could not be trusted. I was a lady with values of my own. I knew where to draw the fine line, and I resented being put on the spot each time I came home. To me, it indicated a lack of respect toward me. One night, though, on our way home from a youth meeting about half a block from my house, Dell pulled to the side of the road and put his arm around me. "We can't do this," I said. He had not been the recipient of my mother's interrogation, so he did not understand my position. He just wanted a few minutes alone with me. Dell did not say a word, but I knew he was angry. He put the car into gear and spun out, squealing the tires as he pulled back onto the road and drove me straight to my house. It was our first disagreement, albeit unspoken, and the tension was thick as pea soup in the living room throughout the rest of the evening. Mama noticed that Dell was angry, and so after he left, she asked me, what was Dell upset about? He was upset because I would not let him park, I replied. She seemed visibly relieved. That was the last time she asked me if we had parked. Dell honored my mother's rules and respected me enough not to pull off the road again. That incident, though, did not stop my enterprising suitor. It just forced his creativity. One thing I soon learned about Dell is that he hated to be told he couldn't do something, except when it came to my own personal limits. He became more determined. When given ultimatums or unreasonable restrictions, he creatively found a way around them. With a little strategic planning on his part, we managed to hit nearly every red stoplight going to or coming home from wherever we had been. It seemed a shame to waste all that time, so we kissed through most of those red lights. And when there were no other cars, we sat through a few green lights too. It was not only kissing and harmless, but it cemented our relationship and drew us closer to one another. January was a good time in our friendship, and we were getting to know each other. February came, and I was wondering just how strongly I felt about Dell. Some of my friends at school and church asked me, "Are you in love with him?" "I don't know," I would reply. Dell was really nice and always the gentleman. I liked spending time with him. I was comfortable being in his company, but love was something I was unsure of. I had experienced little love in my first 16 years, and I did not know what love should feel like. "Are you going to marry him?" they would question me. "I don't know," I would say. "He hasn't asked me." I wondered how I would respond if he were to ask me to marry him. On evenings, when he was not at my house, he called me and we would talk for hours on the phone about nothing in particular. Then, without warning, about the first week into February, he stopped calling me for several days. I didn't know why he had not called. On Valentine's Day, and 3 days before my 17th birthday, Dell called. I was on my way home from school bus stop, which was a long country block from my house. My sister-in-law, Randall's wife, who lived next door, called me to the phone at their house. I ran the last few yards to her door because I did not want to keep Dell waiting. I reached the house out of breath and ran into the house. I took the receiver from her and said breathlessly into the phone, "Hello?" "I'm not going to see you anymore," he said. Perplexed, I asked him, "Why?" "I just feel it is for the best," he said. Feeling confused, I said quietly, "Fine, if that's what you want." I wasn't going to beg. I hung up the phone and walked numbly across the driveway to my house. It was at that moment, and too late, that I finally realized the truth, that I was in love with him. I was stunned. In the few second phone call, my whole world was thrown out of orbit. The questions in my mind poured forth. What had I done to offend him? I searched for answers, but they eluded me. Why had he broken my heart? Why didn't he explain himself? Had I done something to offend him? Had I said something that might have hurt him? Was he breaking up with me because I would not allow him to park on the way home from church? We had not quarreled. There was nothing I could bring to mind that might have precipitated his actions. Yet the rejection burned in my soul like a hot iron.